If you are a Scream 4 fan, I hope you are not ready to mourn me. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be continuing my Scream series with a review of Scream 4. Now, I can distinctly remember seeing Scream 4 in theaters just like I did the previous 3 Scream movies. I was so excited. I absolutely loved the Scream trilogy. And at the time, I felt like Scream and Die Hard were my top tier quality-wise franchises. And I initially did not have the best theatrical experience with Scream 4. I was extremely disappointed and let down. Now, I know that I am in the minority here, but hear me out when it comes to my reasons for why I do not like Scream 4. One thing that I have always loved about the Scream universe is how much I love the characters, how much I enjoy them, how entertaining they are to watch. My biggest gripe with Scream 4 is how much I do not like the characters. None of the new characters were likable, enjoyable, entertaining, or anything along those lines for me. There was nothing really special about them. At the time that Scream 4 came out, like I said, didn't have the best theatrical experience. I remember being extremely disappointed, but I also remember thinking, well, maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe I was expecting too much, but time went on and I just never rewatched it. It just really had no rewatch value for me because I just didn't enjoy it that much. Now, since I am doing my Scream series, I did recently rewatch this a few days ago and I pretty much had the same experience. Now, sometimes I can see a movie, not really enjoy it, but then time passes and for some reason, I end up actually enjoying it a lot more on rewatch, but I just did not have that experience with Scream 4. All these years later, I'm seeing it again, and I just literally am having the same experience. My biggest issue with this movie, like I said, are the characters. I cannot praise our teen group in Scream enough. That was the only, high school group that we get until we get to Scream 4. And y'all, I'm sorry, but and you know what? It's not even that the characters are bad characters. They're not. But it's nothing. Like, I loved our teens in Scream. I even loved, Mickey. I like Detective Kincaid. But with Scream 4, nobody was enjoyable. Nobody stood out. Our new group of teens just are not interesting enough for me. None of them feel very original. I really got no great or iconic moments or one-liners like I got from Billy, from Stu, from Randy. And I didn't really feel the dynamic with this group like I felt with that one. And again, I'm only comparing it to that group because that was our only teen group. This one was just a dud for me. I don't particularly dislike anyone besides Jill, but I don't particularly like anyone either. And I am so lost on why people love Kirby so much. Hayden Panettiere, gorgeous, talented. She gave a solid performance. But outside of her scene at the end when Ghostface calls her, what lines or scenes stand out from Kirby? What did she do outside of that ending Ghostface call that stands out? That's classic. That's a classic moment. Do we just like her because she's a film nerd? Is that it? That's the only qualification? In my opinion, they really didn't do much with Kirby. Nothing that stands out to me anyway. The film class kids, Charlie and his friend, they're fine. I don't like them. I don't dislike them. Like I said, throughout the movie, it was just nothing special. There was no spark for me. In my humble opinion, when I think of Randy or Mickey, our other film enthusiasts, I think of classic, memorable lines, scenes, performances. For me, Charlie and his friend are very forgettable. I just got nothing memorable from Kirby either. Nothing memorable from our film class guys. Again, outside of Kirby's Ghostface call, the character, I really cannot even recall much of her from the movie besides I'm the best friend or something like that she said. Also, Deputy Judy and Jill were both extremely boring to me throughout the movie. And what was the point of the whole angle of like Judy having a crush on Dewey? That went nowhere. So let's talk about the opening sequence. Very unenjoyable for me. I hate the Stab 6 opener. Nothing particularly clever or entertaining. It felt a much more silly than scary for me. Now, I do like the Stab 7 opener, I think it was, with the just shut up and watch the movie. Not amazing, not classic, not great, not iconic, but enjoyable. One of my issues with Scream 4, one of many, is the fact that I was kind of confused with the direction of the film, because for the first time in the Scream universe, Sydney and her crew are not the main focus, right? Jill and her friend group are the main focus. It is Jill and her friends that are being stalked and killed off by Ghostface. The audience spends the majority of the runtime with Jill and her crew. But in the end, none of them survive. So why did we spend so much time with them? It felt to me like they were building it to move Sid and crew to the background and out of the forefront. That was my experience upon first watch. But then everyone dies after not focusing on Sydney and her crew. I don't know. Sydney was still enjoyable though. Gail at this point feels really redundant and unnecessary. I hated her lines in this movie. I'm going to revitalize your face with my tarnished brand. Terrible line for me. I'm sorry. At this point, what is the purpose of Gail? Like, what purpose does she serve really? And Gail for me was always a fan favorite of mine. But at Scream, once we get to Scream 4, the special thing about the Scream universe, of course, is the horror commentary. For me in Scream 4, it's just kind of lazily referenced. They don't really say much. The remake craze is referenced, but no real statement is made. The Scream magic for me is missing here. Also, a lot just didn't make sense to me. Sydney is always the target of the killer, right? Even though now it's Jill and her crew, but she does get a taunting call. So why would I stay at my aunt's house? Everybody around me always die when Ghostface show up. So why am I there? I would think you would be putting, them in danger, so to speak. Also, Sydney not being on alert when she finds that Jill's boyfriend snuck in past the cops outside. Baby, if the boyfriend can get in, the killer can get in. Sydney running next door when Jill's friend is getting killed with no weapon. The hell were you gonna do, Sydney? Like, come on, baby, you smarter than that. I was very unimpressed with the party scene. Extremely. Not only was it very much just giving me, we've done this, and when we're doing it again, it just does not feel as fun. It was nowhere near as well crafted this time around. I just didn't enjoy it. So the reveal of Ghostface, I was actually fine with Charlie with that reveal. And I even liked how they pulled the whole pretending he was being attacked ruse. Billy pulled that ruse, like Ghostface attacked him in Scream. And I enjoyed the way they did it here. I did feel like though the girl who knows movies, Kirby, should have been smarter than this. You never win with Ghostface trivia, right? Like Billy and Stu said, you get it wrong, you die. You get it right, you die. Kirby has seen the Stab movie. She should know this. Even if Charlie was not Ghostface, I would have, as the movie, horror nerd, film buff, would have never opened that door because it was giving trap. But the reveal of Jill, that scrawny toothpick little girl, y'all, I just could not. I cannot take Jill serious as a villain. I can't. And when I tell you the Ghostface costume, it must come with shoe lifts and shoulder pads because Ghostface be looking broad-shouldered out. There is no way Jill was killing people, child. There's no way Sydney couldn't fight her off. It should have been easy to throw Jill like a rag doll. One thing I always love with Scream is that third act reveal, that third act climactic sequence. I love when the killer is revealed and they give the whole speech and can finally go completely off the rails. They don't have to pretend to be your friend anymore. Kind of a letdown here for me. Jill's speech actually kind of just was annoying. The whole Sydney, Marsha. But the whole motive of I want to be famous and Sydney the survivor, Sydney the star. First of all, we did this already with Roman. But also the whole I want to be famous motive. So you freaking kill your own mother to be famous. Yes, that does make a sick ghost face, but I don't know. I just wasn't buying it from her. Let's say you are that unhinged. I just wasn't getting it. Sydney was never the sole survivor. Dewey, Randy, Gail survived. Also, why not target Gail? Gail survived, was available to you in Woodsboro, wrote books, became rich and famous. Sydney just so happens to come here for her book tour. Sydney never wanted fame. Arguably, this all started because of Gail. Reporting, the whole thing with Sid's mom, the whole thing with Cotton Reary, writing the Woodsboro murder books, getting her books made into movies. Essentially, Jill was just using Charlie, right? We're made to believe that Jill is this huge mastermind. She's the one pulling the strings, right? Stu was pulling the strings. Mrs. Loomis was pulling the strings. Now it's Jill. But Jill don't got the good sense to make sure Sydney dead. She don't have the good sense to, stab Sydney like 25 times or cut her throat or a number of make sure that this girl dead. So she just stabs her one time in the gut. We get to the hospital. And this is when the movie really nosedives for me and goes downhill. The ending sequence felt so nonsensical and idiotic. First of all, Dewey yet again, very useless. And I love Dewey, but God, he be useless. First of all, Dewey can't shoot. He always misses. Be having a clear shot. Gail gets attacked. He has a clear shot and misses. Then in a hospital talking to Jill, not picking up on the matching wound comment, which was so blatant and obvious. Also not finding it odd that a teen girl who was just almost killed, mother and friends were just murdered, and sitting here talking about writing a book with your wife? Aren't cops supposed to pay attention to detail? And I'm sitting here that don't feel odd to you, Dewey? Why is that on your mind right now? I mean, it's going to be on Gail's mind because Gail gone Gail. But from this teen, that who should have, this should be traumatic. You experienced this when Sydney was a teenager. Was she talking about writing a damn book? That ain't raised no eyebrow. So Jill discovers that Sydney is not dead and decides to just trace through the hospital and kill her. The mastermind decides to do this. Jill, girl, the killers, because she framed her boyfriend and Charlie, are dead. So who you gonna say killed Sydney? Then to try and kill Gail and Dewey and Deputy Judy, how do you think that would play out? Let's say they all ended up dead, girl. How was you gonna spend this? The movie being self-aware enough to have Jill say this is getting a little bit ridiculous regarding a hospital scene, it don't save it. It's not tongue-in-cheek and in the spirit of Scream. It just gives me, y'all knew this was terrible and you did it anyway. I actually would have preferred if Jill won. I would have preferred Jill winning and ending Scream 4 with her being the sole survivor and the media talking about her just like she wanted. Then y'all could come in with Scream 5 showing us Sydney survived. Or have Jill win at the end of Scream 4, but then at the very end, right before it ends, we hear Sydney survived. I don't know, something, but this was terrible. For the life of me, I just cannot take Jill serious as a villain. Even when Jill reveals herself, right, and she gives her unhinged speech, I don't know if it's the actress, but it just all felt like a joke. It felt terrible. I wasn't buying it. When she was like, what am I supposed to do? Work? I was just like, I don't don't get it. And like, I get it as far as social media, influencer, age, reality stars. But I was just sitting there like, okay, you want to be famous? Okay. It made more sense to me with Roman. And maybe he was just more convincing. My mother abandoned me and raised you, and I want everything that you have that should have been mine. But Jill, I halfway feel like it's the performance that didn't sell it for me. I could be wrong, but I just, because I'm just not getting why it just wasn't resonating. I just wasn't buying it. Because if I really think about it, I want to be famous, fine. That's a fine motive. The whole, I don't need friends, I need fans, fine. Maybe if somebody else delivered the line, I would have bought it. And I think she even says, like, my own mother had to die for me to pull this off. Again, in general, not a bad line, but it felt like a bad line. Like, maybe if someone else would have delivered it, I would have bought it. As a character, as a ghost face, she is definitely batshit crazy and unhinged. I'm not sure if I would consider her a mastermind or even diabolical. Maybe if they would have ended at the party, I could buy that. But the actions in a hospital just takes the character like, no, you're not diabolical. You're not a mastermind. You're a joke. The scene where Jill is pulling the whole thin line between love and hate, the whole liar, and like beating herself up. I like that scene, but I laughed throughout the whole thing. I don't know. Nothing with Jill is giving me scary. Nothing with Jill is giving me threatening. I did enjoy Anthony Anderson and his partner talking about cops in the movies. Now the joking and like unserious feel that characters take their deaths irks me. The kid pretending to be gay, the cop saying F Bruce Willis, nah. I like that line. But who is that unserious when you are being murdered? Those moments feel really unnatural in my humble opinion. Also, how did Anthony Anderson not see the killer coming up behind his partner? Come on now, child. Again, the same thing with Dewey. Aren't cops supposed to like pay attention to their surroundings? When I tell you Woodsboro has the worst police force in the entire freaking world, y'all, how come folks' best friends be getting murdered and it just never seemed to have any real impact on the characters? They just go on partying and shooting the breeze when their best friends are brutally murdered. I know I am on a planet by myself with this opinion, but Scream 4, it's kind of I want to say it's god awful, but I guess I won't go that far. Very weak characters, cheeky opening but lackluster. It's crazy to think that Scream would be the franchise to give me a really uninspiring movie. Overall, for me personally, Scream 4 was a huge letdown. No kills or moments or lines besides F. Bruce Willis. And a few others, but not many lines stand out for me. None of the new characters sparked my interest as people I wanted to follow. I wasn't very intrigued by any of the new characters. They weren't very entertaining. They were just kind of blasé. The movie plays out a new group of teens in the forefront and it gave me the feeling of our returning three being pretty inconsequential to the story, but then at the end they are back in the forefront. I like the don't F with the original. Objectively, I can see why people enjoy Scream 4. Most of it just did not work for me though. I just really can't get into that intro. Like, oh God, like I hate that intro. I get what they were going for, but it was a miss for me. I'll never forget seeing that intro for the first time and just being like, what is happening? It was going from movie to movie and I didn't know what was going on. Overall, Scream 4 really just drags. The highlight for me is Sydney. I didn't care for Gail and Sydney at the little like film group thing. Both killers were short and scrawny, and I just didn't buy any of it. I would have bought Jill's mom as the killer. Like Jill and her mom as the killers. Jill's mom helping Jill, do this whole thing to be famous, and then Jill double crosses her mom and kills her like she did Charlie. I would have bought that more. Because I could believe her mama in that suit and having the strength to kill and fight folks off. I don't believe, Charlie, you look small. And Jill's mom was a little off too. I can't remember what she said exactly, but she made some kind of like off the cuff remark about nobody ever asked me about how I feel or how I took things or whatever. Something along those lines, because Maureen was her sister. Something like that. But it was off. I didn't enjoy Charlie using the stew lines when they're about to stab each other. It just didn't work for me. The climax was enjoyable, but over the top. And I love over the top. But this was over the top in like a really silly, unrealistic way. Now, I did enjoy the Ghostface dialogue with the phone calls. I enjoyed the "Who are you, Michael Myers?" I like that part. And that is what is unique about Scream, right? Usually with slashers, you have a like freaking unstoppable, unkillable, can never, go down villain who keeps coming back and keeps coming back, and the victims continually change. But with the Scream franchise, the villains continually change, and our victims, or well, our main victims, are the unstoppable, unkillable force. Also, this was one of the better whodunits in the Scream universe. I will say that. And actually, I feel like if the movie had ended with Jill winning, if we had Ghostface win, it likely would have raised my enjoyment of the movie. If we would have cut out the hospital. Scream 4 isn't terrible, I guess. Scream is the most top tier franchise. None of the sequels are bad quality movies or poorly made, etc. Some movies just aren't going to work for you. And Scream 4 just did not work for me. Overall, I do think that objectively, it's a solid slasher, but my experience with the film, it underwhelms. And it's very unenjoyable. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you are a Scream 4 fan, I hope you are not ready to Marnie me. If you haven't, make sure you check out my Scream series for my thoughts on Scream. The first 3 Scream movies still to come. My reviews of Scream 5 as well as the new Scream 6. I will also be ranking all of the movies in the Scream franchise as well as ranking the Ghostface killers. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.